Jiro Tanaka is a 28-year-old single dude who hasn't had a girlfriend in over half a decade. On top of that, he's a jobless NEET. But there's a lot more to his story than just that. See, Jiro's story starts about 6 weeks back, when he finally grew sick of the unfair treatment he was getting at work. Over 100 hours of overtime, working holidays, late payments, and a crappy boss with a crappier attitude, Jiro had the worst of it all. Unwilling to deal with that crap anymore, he told his boss to stick it where the sun doesn't shine and quit his job. Since then, he's been living a life of total freedom, but to be honest, he doesn't know what to do now. He doesn't regret quitting at all, and with the money he's got saved up, he can last at least a year, but even still, life just feels purposeless. That is, until he finds something very strange in his mail. Tucked away between bills and brochures, there's a job offer for a position titled as Dungeon Tester. As ridiculous as the whole thing seems, the salary and perks tied to the position seems ridiculously good. Still, Jiro can't shake the feeling it's some kind of prank and decides to sleep on it. When he wakes up, he finds himself drifting into nostalgia over the RPGs he once enjoyed playing, and how this job could be a new chapter for him, provided of course that it's real. But at this point, what's he got to lose? Turning to some wrapped equipment in his apartment, Jiro pulls out his old kendo gear, revealing that he was quite the athlete in his youth. Between his nostalgia, capabilities, free time, and curiosity, his choice is already made. After a quick call to schedule an interview with the company, Mao, Jiro arrives at their headquarters. However, from the moment he enters, he's assaulted by one after another outlandish scene. First, there's the weird feeling when he entered, then the dark elf cosplayers at the front desk, and then a floating teacup? Before he can try to question just what in the hell he's walked into, his interviewer pulls up, and shocker, she's a total babe of a dark elf too. After getting over his initial shyness around this beauty, Jiro proceeds to embarrass himself further with some over-the-top awkwardness. Luckily, the interviewer, Sueda, simply brushes it off and leads him to the interview room. Little does he know this is where Jiro's perception of the world itself will change. Because Sueda's first question is simply, what does she look like? Now naturally not wanting to be committed to an insane asylum, Jiro hesitates for a moment, and yet he does eventually choke out that she seems to be a dark elf. Instantly realizing how that sounds, Jiro starts profusely apologizing until he hears Sueda say something shocking. He has passed. As Jiro wonders just what the hell's going on, Sueda explains that his ability to see her true self is a sign of high magic power aptitude. Seeing his disbelief, she gives him a little show with some fire magic. Following that, she gives him a quick explanation on how magic and magic capacity work, and tells him his magic aptitude is at least 4 on their scale of 10. First, he was able to see the text on their job offer, then he was able to step into the headquarters, and then he could see the true forms of the receptionists and Sueda herself. All of those were tests to gauge magic aptitude. With that, he meets all the requirements to join them. But first, time for some details about his job. See, Mao is part of the Demon King's army, which is currently in a war against Eastwall, a world inhabited by the Residents of Light. The dungeon that they manage is the bridge between the lands of the two factions. Their duty is to make sure Eastwall's hero never makes it through the dungeon and into Demon Lands. To that end, they need dungeon testers to ensure that it remains impenetrable in design and difficulty. At Sueda's suggestion, Jiro happily agrees to see the dungeon for himself before they discuss anything further. On the way there, Jiro gets to see the various demonic races that work in Mao, all while embarrassing both himself and Sueda with some accidental riz. Before long, they're inside the dungeon itself, where Jiro marvels at just how enormous and unbelievable the place is. From mystic ruins to crystal mountains and exotic jungles, this place is absolutely unreal. As if to emphasize that point, an honest-to-God dragon picks that moment to whoosh past the pair, nearly scaring the crap out of Jiro. Overwhelmed by everything, Jiro decides to take a smoke break after getting Sueda's permission. As he sits there and soaks it all in, he realizes he's not shaking right now from fear but excitement. But before he accepts, he has one more question. What is this war even about? In response, Sueda offers a history lesson about how the demons and humans were split into separate realms 5,000 years ago by the god of the moon. While the demons were sent to a new realm, humans were given Eastwall. Amidst this separation, the dungeon was meant to be a path towards peace, for the demons to return to their home in Eastwall if peace was ever achieved. Instead, they've been locked out for millennia, craving the light of their home as inherently as the need to breathe. For Sueda too, all she wants is to go home. After hearing her plight, Jiro is frozen for a few moments. After all, sad or not, this whole thing sounds dangerous. And yet, what's he got to lose? Out there, he's just a NEET who's pushing 30 with no loved ones to speak of. Reminding himself of how fearless he was in his youth, Jiro stands and makes his choice. With a fantasy world in front of him and a beautiful woman showing such a sad face, there's only one thing to do. For as long as she'll have him, Jiro will gladly fight for the Demon King army. Fast forward some time from there, and Jiro now finds himself in full kendo gear being demolished by Sueda in the company's training hall. Even with his experience in armor, Sueda's attacks feels like a freight train. Despite this, Jiro is determined to keep going and tells Sueda as much, bringing a smile to her face. To go back a little, right after his interview, Sueda takes Jiro in to perform a ritual of sorts on his body. Through a full body tattoo called a magic crest, his body will not only be enhanced all around, but he'll also be able to grasp his own magic more easily. While Jiro lies in wait of the tattoo, Sueda has some fun at his expense, teasing him about how painful it'll be. In reality though, it's done before Jiro even knows it, and once Sueda activates the crest with her own magic, he feels like a whole new person. With the enhancement from the crest, he feels lighter and stronger than he ever has before. In fact, he feels so good that he decides to test out that theory with a little jump. Instead, the simple hop turns into a massive leap and Jiro faceplants into the ceiling. As he's coming crashing down, Sueda uses a wind spell to save him and goes on to scold the crap out of him for being so reckless. Once she's done giving Jiro a talking to, Sueda produces a magic tablet that can measure one's abilities. Using this, they learn that Jiro's a brand spanking average NPC in regards to most of his stats. Hell, he might just be worse since he even has a contamination debuff from all the smoking he's done over the years. Rather than being disheartened though, Jiro just smiles and decides it's time to train. And so we come back to the present, where Sueda is kicking the ever-loving shit out of Jiro without breaking a sweat. No matter what he does, the Dark Elf is just too fast for him. And so in a moment of what seems to be insanity, he decides to throw his weapon. Naturally, that absolutely idiotic move ends with Sueda turning his skull into a poor cosplay of Humpty Dumpty. Rubbing salt into both the proverbial and literal wound, she tells Jiro that risky moves like that are for people who actually have a chance of winning. Ouch. Afterwards, Sueda uses another form of magic to heal Jiro's head, shocking him at how many different types of powers she has. Even more than that though, he wonders if maybe he just has no talent if he lost that easily. Sueda's response is just a puzzled expression and an explanation. He's not supposed to be too strong just yet. The way the magic crest works is by developing with time and combat experience. So the more Jiro trains, the more his stats will grow. And since he's level 1 right now, he can just stick to sparring with her. Moving on, Sueda finally addresses the single extraordinary reading on his stat sheet. Jiro's magic aptitude isn't merely above 4, it's at a whopping 8 on the 10-point scale. That's enough to potentially be a general class at some point. Still a little disappointed in his performance, Jiro can't help but wonder if he's really all that impressive. Without hesitation, Sueda tells him that he absolutely is, and his potential is far greater than her own. In fact, ever since his aptitude was recorded, he's been the main topic of discussion in Mao's personnel department. Right as Jiro's feeling himself slipping into self-doubt despite her pep talk, Sueda offers one last bit of encouragement. To the Demon King army, he is a star of hope in these dark times. Flustered by her statement, Jiro's completely caught off guard when Sueda suddenly grabs him by the hand and pleads with him to never quit. Right as she's rambling over the absolute disaster that is their PR department, Sueda realizes what she's doing and the two break apart with massive blushes. Fast forward another few hours and Jiro's done training with Sueda for the day. Now it's time to check out the dormitory building Mao Corps has near their headquarters. The second he steps into his assigned apartment, Jiro's blown away by just how insanely luxurious the place is. From the space to the facilities and even the bathroom, this must be what it feels like to be more than a miserable wage slave. After a relaxing bath and some beer, Jiro decides to check out his stats again, and surprisingly, they've actually gone up just from Sueda kicking his ass all day. Speaking of who, Jiro can't help but be enamored with the gorgeous Dark Elf who's grown so close to him so fast. In fact, just hearing her call him by his first name is enough to motivate him. For her and her smile, he'll make sure to do his best in training every day. With the start of a new day, it's time for some fresh fan service. So for no reason at all whatsoever except for your enjoyment, dear viewer, here's Sueda getting ready for the day. That was awesome. Moving on. Today finds Jiro attending a lecture in Mao's Dungeon Tester training program, though there's something that he takes notice of instantly. For how massive this hall is, there's barely any recruits. Sueda really wasn't kidding about their PR department being in shambles, it would seem. As the lecture begins, the professor for today's lesson, Royce, tells all the recruits about the different types of monsters in the dungeon. First, there are soul monsters, whose bodies are made of magic power and disappear when killed. Then, there are blood monsters that have actual physical bodies that are left as corpses on death. These big bastards are anywhere from 3 to 10 times stronger than the average soul monster, so if any of them see one, their priority is to run like all hell in the other direction. After all, even with all their safety measures and medical facilities, they can still die. Next up, the thing that any self-respecting RPG player cares about above all else: loot. All monsters leave behind drops on death. While soul monsters drop valuable raw materials, blood monsters' drops are insanely valuable and can be sold. But the real kicker is, despite being contracted with Mao, they're all free to collect and sell their drop items however they want. With Jiro's brain completely hardwired to the unfair environment of the black company he's worked for so long, he's baffled by this and asks if they can consider these drops as bonuses. To his absolute shock though, Royce tells him that bonuses to their salary are given separately on top of all this. While Jiro's mind breaks like a girl in an extra raunchy doujin from the overload of good news, Royce explains their last order of business for the day. They will be filling out answer sheets for job selection. Their choices are between Vanguard, Ranger, and Rearguard, with each job providing different skills. As Royce declares the importance of this choice and tells everyone to get going, the hall breaks out into chaos. Watching from the sidelines, Jiro observes silently as most people go straight for the Rearguard jobs. Frankly, he can understand the appeal, but there's only one real choice for him. Jiro Tanaka shall be a Vanguard. As one can imagine, Jiro's choice is pretty heavily influenced by the whole classic hero stereotype, determined to be the perfect swordsman and master this new fantasy life of his. At least, that was the idea, but the more he thinks about it after getting home, the more he wonders if that was the wrong choice. After all, Sueda keeps beating him in all their spars, and he might not get to train with the gorgeous woman anymore since she's a magic user. As Jiro slowly drifts off to sleep, he can see and hear only Sueda calling out his name in that kind tone of hers. Even in his dreams, this amazing woman is waking him up? Oh, she's on his bed. In a nightgown. What the fuck? Naturally, Jiro freaks all the way out and backs up, asking what Sueda is doing here of all places. Rather than giving him an answer, a tearful Sueda just asks him one question. Does he have life insurance? Pardon the The next thing Jiro knows, Sueda has dragged him to the table and walked him through filling out an entire application form for life insurance with Mao. Weirder still, as soon as he's done, Sueda takes the papers and rushes back out as if she's on a deadline. Meanwhile, all Jiro can think is what the actual hell just happened. That afternoon, Jiro arrives at the Vanguard training hall to a pretty shocking sight. Absolute emptiness. It would seem that he's quite literally the only person who applied for the Vanguard class. He's just in the middle of wondering what kind of instructor he'll have when, to his surprise, Sueda shows up in full combat gear. Right as Jiro asks what's going on, Sueda suddenly grabs his hand and starts apologizing profusely for this morning and what's about to happen. She's just about to explain what she means when suddenly, something makes her back up and tell him it's too late. Instead, she now grabs his hand again and swears that she'll do her best to protect him. Jiro doesn't have to wait long to learn what she's talking about, because just a fraction of a moment later, he feels the essence of death itself pressing down on his shoulders. As he struggles to stand under this pressure, two voices speak out from behind them, talking to each other about none other than Jiro. As he stares at these two, Jiro can't help but feel completely sick. This right here must be what life insurance was for. As the pressure lets up a little and these two show themselves, Jiro comes face to face with what might just be the ugliest sons of guns he's ever seen in his life. Unfortunately, they also feel like the strongest ones he's ever met, and they're going to be his instructors. As the two demonic beings, Scrawny and Brawny, start talking about Jiro, all he can think of is how unbelievably dangerous his new instructors look. Twisting towards Sueda in desperation, Jiro tries to talk his way out of this, only for Scrawny to suddenly get right on top of him. While Jiro tries to process the sheer speed of this monster, Scrawny introduces himself as Fusio, and Brawny calls out that his name is Kyo, and from here on out, they'll be Jiro's personal instructors. Before he can even think to respond, the two start discussing amongst themselves how Jiro doesn't look like anything special, despite his aptitude being an 8. With every passing sound, they're completely ignoring Jiro, and even start arguing with Sueda about why she would hype up such a pathetic human. Unable and unwilling to abide by this any longer, Jiro gathers up his balls of steel and speaks up, asking them if he's truly the only one who chose the Vanguard class. Instantly, the duo's focus shifts to him, and with an exceptionally sadistic joy, they tell him that it's a good thing. After all, they have the training ground all to themselves, and they can both focus their attention purely on training him. As if they can smell the fear on him, which honestly they probably can. The demons start talking down to Jiro, asking if he's really as pathetic and cowardly as he looks, and is just going to chicken out. Sure enough, that's exactly the push Jiro needed. With a resolute look on his face, he takes a few steps back to properly equip all his kendo gear, and then, without hesitation, he stands tall in front of the demons and bellows out a greeting and thanks for their guidance. Almost instantly, Scrawny and Brawny's expressions shift from disdainful to amused. If nothing else, at least this kid's got guts. If he's really ready for this though, they're not going to go easy on him, no matter how much Sueda pleads with them to do exactly that. Deciding to take the kid on first, Brawny steps up and summons what can only be a goddamn back scratcher as his weapon. Despite its absurdity, Jiro knows better than to drop his guard or be too cocky, especially when Sueda suddenly yells out for him to be careful. Even so, the only path forward Jiro can see right now is, well, forward. He has to take his head on with everything he has, and so he will. With all hesitation thrown to the wind, Jiro dashes forward at Brawny. Unfortunately for Jiro, the path forward is a highly treacherous one. The moment he gets in range, Brawny hits him with a smack of such overwhelming power that Jiro is instantly sent flying back, his armor destroyed and his body all but broken. Luckily, Sueda is able to reach his side fast enough to heal him before any of the damage can truly set in. Even so, she can't help but angrily call out to Brawny for being so rough. Before she can really rip into the instructors though, Jiro suddenly gets up, shocking them all. Even more shocking though is how utterly unbothered he seems by what just happened. In fact, his only true concern is that he should have had that exchange recorded, so he could study the footage. Seeing that this human has a lot more courage than he thought, Brawny grins manically and calls for Jiro to go again. And even while Sueda insists on him stopping for today, Jiro assures her he can do it. So after getting some replacement armor for the set that Brawny just eviscerated, Jiro stands up in position once more. As he thinks back on what just happened, it hits him. He almost died just now. And yet despite how frustrating that is, it's also exhilarating. It's been so long that he'd almost forgotten, but this is what it means to practice kendo with everything you have. Unfortunately, demon maniacs still trump all of that, and Jiro ends up face down, ass up in the ground, quite literally. But at the very least, his resolve has won the respect of his instructors, if nothing else. In fact, Scrawny can only describe him as a madman, his soul shining with determination even at death's door. While Sueda heals the KO'd Jiro, Scrawny announces that he'll be the one to train Jiro tomorrow. Meanwhile, Sueda just looks down at him with a strange emotion in her eyes and makes a promise that she will protect him. Unfortunately for Jiro, there's only so much Sueda can protect him from, and training that's so ridiculously grueling that it might as well be torture is not on the list. From the very first day that Jiro chose the Vanguard class, his life has become absolute hell. Day in and day out, instructors Scrawny and Brawny beat the ever-loving shit out of him. From electrocution to petrification and poisoning on Scrawny's side to train him against magic, all the way to physical abuse unlike anything you've ever seen on Brawny's end for physical improvement, it's a miracle that Jiro's even still alive. Well, that and Sueda's constant doting certainly helps. But the physical suffering isn't even the end of it. As Jiro leaves the training grounds day after day beaten to an utter pulp, the other Mao recruits have been taking notice of him. More importantly, of how hard of a time he's having. So what do? Have some sympathy and be decent people? Nope, they brand him as a failure and belittle him from afar, bestowing humiliating nicknames upon him. As if that wasn't already bad enough, it also just happens that all the other new recruits are younger than him, which definitely isn't helping his image any. Hell, some of them even treat him like a has-been peon fit only to bring them coffee. As Jiro collapses in bed after another long and torturous day, he reminds himself that he has more important things to worry about. All of this, it's for one reason and one reason only: getting stronger. The words of his instructor Brawny echo in his mind. After a full month of training with the psychopaths, it's time to cut the bullshit. All he needs to do now is be strong. And so, just like that, the initial training period for the recruits has come to an end. Now it's time for the joint field training. Supervised by the head of Mao's HR department, Evia, this session will throw them into a live battle against dungeon monsters for a full hour. Their only goal is to work together and push back the soul monsters as they get stronger and stronger. And of course, any who feel they've hit their limit are free to quit, though they will be marked as failing. With the rules explained, Evia announces a 5-minute prep window before the monsters are summoned. Before Jiro knows it, that window's flown away and it's time to get started. With a call from Evia, summoning circles appear on the training field and start spitting out soul goblins at a rapid pace. After their initial whining about how gross the monsters are, the recruits get to work blasting them with their magic spells, causing Jiro to marvel at the fantastical sight. Honestly, if he'd taken the time to think things through instead of acting on impulse, he probably would have chosen rearguard too. Pretty soon though, he realizes a massive flaw in the rest of the recruits' plan of attack. Their plan is just to attack without pacing themselves. And sure enough, as Jiro watches with a deadpan expression, the rearguard are overwhelmed and out of magic power. On top of that, their attack being entirely focused in one spot gave the goblins time to split up and flank them from both sides. Right as one of the witches is about to fall victim to a sneaky goblin, Jiro jumps into the fray, slicing it clean in half. After making sure the girl's alright, he moves away from the others and activates a skill he acquired during his training: Monkey's Howl. With this, every goblin in his vicinity is suddenly drawn towards Jiro, allowing him to draw them away from the others. As he leads them away, he yells instructions for the others to deal with any stragglers. Finally, it's time for him to let loose and show the fruits of his training in full. Without hesitation, Jiro launches through the battlefield, cutting down goblins like a demon among monsters. Even as he takes damage himself, he just powers through, crushing the goblins with every part of his body that can be swung. After a month in the absolute hell that was Vanguard training, pain like this is nothing to him. As the clock ticks on and stronger goblins start spawning in, a good chunk of the rearguard starts quitting. By the 30-minute mark, the death march has begun, and yet for a seasoned Black Company employee like Jiro, this feeling right here, this is home. Meanwhile, in the observation chamber made for Mao's executives, the generals of the Demon King army are having a blast. Scrawny and Brawny in particular are thoroughly entertained by the show Jiro's putting on. Something which only annoys Sueda, of course, who's on the verge of tears from seeing her boy getting hurt so much. Meanwhile, the rearguard instructor and another one of the 7 generals, Lunaria, just observes in silence as her students embarrass themselves and her. And then, every eye in the room turns as one to settle on a new arrival. The man who even the 7 generals bow down to, the president of Mao Corporation, and most importantly, the 37th Demon Lord. And he's here because he's taken an interest in Jiro. Cutting forward a bit, we see Jiro and the rest of the dungeon testing recruits in their lecture hall. Here, Evia informs them that less than half of them have been chosen as employees, having shown acceptable ability and character in the joint training earlier. Jiro, however, is more concerned about something else. Who the hell is the hot guy next to him? Of course, the overly eccentric demon lord simply smiles at him, confusing Jiro before, just moments later, Evia introduces him as the president of Mao. Suffice to say, as the man makes his highly charismatic introduction, Jiro is damn near shitting bricks. After the announcements are finished, Jiro heads out to meet Sueda, who congratulates him on his official hiring. When Jiro mentions what just happened inside with the president, Sueda sheepishly laughs it off and explains that the man's just highly eccentric. Hell, he was the one who came up with the idea of breaching Earth and recruiting humans to begin with. Even so, Jiro can't help but feel a uniquely charismatic aura from that man. Seeing that he understands that the demon lord is more than the front he puts up, Sueda smiles and mentions that he is indeed the one who yearns for Eastwall more than any other. Screw the gloom and doom crap right now though, it's time for shopping. Seeing Jiro's confusion, Sueda leads him to the building's basement, which is one massive shopping mall that caters to all the needs of a dungeon tester. Unfortunately, as much as she wants to go with him, Sueda's got some important work today, so he's going to be on his own. And so Jiro sets out by his lonesome, looking for a couple of specific shops. In the middle of this, he spots a young lady struggling with the inventory for her store. Without even thinking, the man leaps forward and takes some of the load off her shoulders, saving the boxes from a crash in the process as well. Already worried for the girl from what just happened, Jiro's concerned by her pale appearance and insists on making sure she's okay. As it turns out though, chick's not sick, just a vampire. Not even batting an eye at that unbelievable reveal, Jiro just asks her why she's working alone, as if he didn't just learn that she literally could suck him to death. Pause. Seeing no reason to lie, the girl Memoria explains that the rest of her family hates the idea of doing business with humans, so she's been left here to work at Mao alone. To Jiro, who's an adult with a strong sense of responsibility and duty, this is unacceptable. Before Memoria can object, he declares that he'll help out with their inventory management and gets to work hauling boxes. And if the vampire happens to get one hell of a free show in the process, well, it doesn't hurt anyone, does it? By the time Jiro's finished with moving all the boxes, Memoria's crushing on him pretty hard, even if he doesn't realize it. So when he mentions that he's looking for an equipment store, she's quick to suggest the best one around, known as Frog's Horseshoe. Happy to know where he's going next, Jiro thanks the girl and heads out, completely missing the little shy smile on the vampire's face. Soon after, he finds the Frog's Horseshoe and heads inside, only to be jump-scared by a brick shit house of a man. This here is the owner of the store, and while Jiro doesn't know him, the giant knows all about Jiro. Seeing the human's confusion, he explains that the reason everyone in Mao seems to know about Jiro is Sueda. To be more specific, her blabbing and bragging about him while she was drunk off her ass at an office party. Just like that, everything clicks into place for Jiro, and he struggles to balance his frustration and happiness at Sueda's actions. For now, he simply pushes it down and focuses on what he's here for. What might that be? Well, he's not sure. So he asks Giganto here to advise him on whether he should prioritize a good weapon or armor first. And to most likely no one's surprised, the tank of a man is pretty in favor of prioritizing offense. His mind made up about needing to kill his enemies before they can do the same, Jiro decides to get a sword first and buy armor with whatever money he has left after. As Jiro walks through the store, he looks at the incredible weapons on display. One particular blade catches his eyes. Instantly, he feels himself drawn to the thing, almost as if he's connected to it. Upon realizing this, Giganto explains to Jiro that sword's from the mineral tree. It's an incredibly rare material that grows alongside its user by feeding on their magic. And while yes, there have been similar swords in the past that became the stuff of legends, that kind of thing's a 1 in a million occurrence. Most of them just end up being duds, so he shouldn't try to, never mind, he went for it. Despite being annoyed by what seems to be arrogance on Jiro's part, Giganto quickly warms up to him once he shares his reasoning. The feeling this sword causes in him is the same as he felt when he first joined the company. No risk matters in the face of that excitement. Letting out a hearty laugh, the shop's owner tells Jiro that his people, the Giants, love people with courage like him. And so the sword is now happily Jiro's partner. All that remains now is to see how far he goes. Fully decked out in his new gear, Jiro sets out for his first day officially on the job as a dungeon tester. It just so happens it's kind of a rough day. Currently, Jiro's fighting hordes of mechanical monsters that are on par with goblins, but as he is now, they might as well be moving in slow motion as far as Jiro's concerned, easily weaving through them and cutting them down with his new sword. Unfortunately, the little bastards are way stronger in numbers than even goblins, and they won't stop coming. So how exactly did our hero end up here on his own? Well, on a coffee date with Sueda that he probably didn't even realize was a date, he learned a lot more about the dungeons. For starters, each of the 7 dungeons are run by one of the 7 generals of the Demon King army and their subordinates. Each of them has its own unique terrain, beasts, and conditions, basically being entire worlds in themselves. Out of these, Sueda advises Jiro on which would be best for him to attempt. While most of the rear guard have gone to the Tree Queen's dungeon, she believes Jiro should go to the Machine King's dungeon instead. The floors there are mostly wide open spaces with plenty of room to move around for a swordsman like himself, and the monsters should go down pretty easily to a sword, even if they are pretty tough. Unfortunately for the Dark Elf's blood pressure, all Jiro hears is that he can go all out in that dungeon and fight his heart out. And that brings us to the present, where Jiro's looting the drops from the machine monsters he just put down. Once he's done with that, he starts moving through the dungeon, utterly amazed by just how complex it is and how numerous the mobs are. And yet, even though he should be terrified and running for his life, Jiro is high on the same excitement from his introduction to this world of magic, and he cannot get enough of it. Eventually, Jiro manages to clear out most, if not all of the machine on the dungeon's first floor. With that done, it isn't much longer till he finds a stairway leading to floor 2. Feeling pumped up and ready for more, the hot-headed adrenaline junkie heads right upstairs. As soon as he makes it up there, he comments on how this should be pretty easy since the layout's the same as the first floor. What he doesn't see is the much more humanoid machine than the one so far on the ceiling above him, preparing for a surprise attack. Luckily, Jiro's spidey sense kicks in just in time to save him from being flattened into a pancake by the new monster. And as if the universe is flipping him a cosmic bird, an entire horde of these upgraded mechanical monsters crawls out of the woodworks to jump Jiro. While Jiro gives his all to cut down all the swaths of enemies before him, the HR department is working double time to monitor all the new dungeon testers. Here, Evia learns from one of her underlings that most of the testers are doing pretty poorly. In the first place, their job is to beat the dungeons, find their weaknesses, and help strengthen them even further. Instead, the pissy little brats refuse to actually work on strengthening themselves and are instead whining about how hard the dungeons are. However, just as the underling is reported to Evia, she suddenly sees a reading that blows everything else out of the water. Unable to believe what she's seeing, she asks Evia to take a look for herself, only for them both to now stare in disbelief. Because inside the Machine King's dungeon, a lone tester is broken through, further than any of the rearguard have managed in their dungeon. Not only has this man stood back up after taking direct hits from a goblin, he's even defeated the damn thing. Astounded by how far this man's gotten, all the way to the 5th floor, Evia's underling wonders if the department head had told the testers about their anti-death safety features for them. As it turns out, Jiro does not in fact know about that, and yet still here he is, pushing himself further than should be humanly possible. Also, he can come back with a smile to Suera. And as though the universe is offering an olive branch, it allows him to fall unconscious right as they meet, landing his face right on the best pillows in the building. The following day, Jiro finds himself called to the office of none other than HR manager Evia. Alongside her are both Suera and Memoria, and not one of them has a positive expression. Naturally, Jiro asks if he's in trouble for something, worried beyond all belief. Luckily for him, it seems like he's been called for the exact opposite reason. According to Evia, he's here to be promoted. To be more precise, he's being given 3 devices used to measure magic aptitude in humans. Using these, the flyers, glasses, and incense burner, he can find others like himself who are potential recruits for Mao. In other words, he's now being appointed as Mao's recruiter. Upon seeing Jiro's shocked expression, Evia explains that he's been chosen because of his excellent performance in the dungeon as a tester. On top of that, he's the oldest of their testers and has an honest and approachable appearance. And perhaps most important of all, they can't step outside the building due to being demons. On Earth, a world without mana, magical beings like them would be drained and die from exhaustion in less than a single day. That's why he's being offered this job as a human. Though he's hesitant at first, the former salaryman in Jiro shines through and instantly accepts the job when Evia mentions a pay raise. With that out of the way, she starts briefing him on the job itself and how he'll have full freedom to recruit who he wants and request whatever resources he needs. Of course, he'll still be doing his tester job as well, so he'd better give them both the appropriate attention. With that, Evia steps out and Jiro is appointed as the official Mao recruiter. With Evia gone, Jiro turns to the other 2 women in the room. Without missing a beat, Memoria takes the chance to thank him for his help last time they met, driving Suera up the wall at the thought of them being close. Her jealousy rearing its head, the dark elf suddenly butts in and decides to explain the functions of the tools Evia has granted to Jiro. First up, the incense burner releases an invisible trail of mana that leads to those in the area with magic aptitude. Next, the glasses allow the wearer to see that invisible trail, leading them to the potential recruit. And so we fast forward to Jiro's first day on the recruitment job, posted at a super busy train station. Unfortunately, the day's been a total bust so far, with nobody even having enough magic aptitude to read the flyers. Realizing that this is getting him nowhere, Jiro decides to hit up a junior from his old company in hopes of recruiting him. And as luck would have it, right as he finishes up with that, the incense burner goes crazy, detecting a human with exceptional magic aptitude. Surprisingly, the person in question turns out to be a kid. Regardless, with the magic aptitude higher than 4, it'd be a waste not to at least try. Naturally, the kid thinks Jiro's full of absolute bullshit at first, but the more he hears and the more proof Jiro shows him, paired with his super friendly and honest demeanor, the kid's almost convinced. For now though, the older man just takes his leave, telling the kid that he can take his time to think about it. From there, he goes straight to grab drinks with his former junior, who shows zero reluctance to curse Jiro out for leaving him alone at that shitty company. Despite his foul attitude though, Jiro knows that his friend Kaido is a good man at his core, and so feeling indebted over leaving him, he proceeds to scam the absolute shit out of him. He lies as easily as he breathes, weaving a tale of an amazing new company with even more amazing benefits and nothing but total babes for coworkers, which of course isn't technically untrue. He just left out the parts about instructors from literal hell and daily torture. Sure enough, Kaido falls for the pitch, hook, line, and sinker. Meanwhile, the kid Jiro met earlier, Masaru, reaches his own apartment. There we see that he's actually a college student who's currently looking after his childhood friend Minami. And as it happens, Minami's a total shut-in who's obsessed with games and RPGs in particular. So when she casually reads the flyer Jiro gave Masaru and reveals that she has high magic aptitude as well, Masaru only really has one choice. Thus, the seeds have been sown for something great. In the not-so-distant future, a party shall be formed under the leadership of the Lone Vanguard, and together they shall reach heights that none before them have achieved. That or they die super young. Kind of a coin toss, really. For now, Jiro finds himself back at Memoria's store in the underground buying recovery potions in bulk, and even if he needs more of them as a solo player, the vampire is pretty damn suspicious of why he needs so many. Enter Kaido, the new recruit to Mao, who's about to have a damn near the roughest and most painful day of his life so far. Right off the bat, Jiro puts him against a giant lizard monster as a tutorial, and instead of helping the guy, Jiro just starts humble bragging about how his first sessions were with a gorgeous lady. As the lizards come closer, Kaido's forced to ignore Jiro's annoying commentary and focus up on defending himself. As Jiro quickly notes, the dual-wielding style Kaido's chosen is pretty good for his movement style and personality. Unfortunately for him, some natural talent still doesn't make up for experience, and he gets totally clobbered by the lizards. And while he's busy getting turned into a living pancake, Jiro decides to take a page out of Jinwoo's book. He's just standing there, menacingly aura-farming his ass off as he faces an honest-to-god dragon. Even with his skull caught between the jaws of a lizard, Kaido's attention is entirely on Jiro. As the dragon slams its tail at the man, Jiro blocks it with his sword, barely even breaking a sweat. Meanwhile, up in the observation box, Masaru and Minami are watching with wonder in their eyes, supervised by Sueda. After realizing that Jiro's recruitment offer was for real, the two have come here to check out the actual company, so Sueda's showing them around. For Minami in particular, this whole situation is simply unbelievable. For years now, she's been unable to find joy or motivation in any of the normal things in life. Throughout the past years from high school all the way to college, it's like she's been living in the dark. Throughout all of that, one of her only two shining lights has been Masaru, and the other one, video games. Not to be a pro or to play competitively or something like that, but just for the fun of fantasy games in particular. And now seeing the creatures on the ground below, she finally has an answer to why. Why did fantasy games alone give her the joy that almost nothing else in life could? It's because this is what she was looking for. Down below, unaware of the hurricane of emotions rampaging in the observation box, Jiro finds the dragon's weak spot, and in a single glorious attack, he defeats the beast. While Kaido and Masaru watch in awe, Minami turns to her childhood friend with a smile. She can't thank him enough for bringing her here. As Masaru is suddenly forced to fight off Minami's overly clingy gratitude, Sueda just smiles at them fondly. Their joy here reminds her of a certain someone else after all. When Minami suddenly asks if she too could beat a dragon like that, Sueda tells her that all she needs is dedication and training. Not only does Minami totally geek out over such a possibility, she proceeds to fangirl over how stunning Sueda is. Back down below, Jiro realizes that he's got 3 whole new recruits on his hands with Kaido and the pair above. With this, he can finally form his own party and stop being a creepy loner. Or at least one of those things. After all, while being solo has its benefits like freedom of movement and action, there's plenty of downsides too, like coming back from dungeons looking like he just went through a dozen blenders and having to constantly buy new equipment. And it doesn't exactly make him feel great to keep worrying Sueda so much either. Hell, even Memoria's shown concern over him being on his own. But now with Kaido and the other two, things are going to change. That is, if he can make sure Kaido doesn't die right here in basic training. But honestly, as he's quick to point out to his former junior, he'll take being a superhuman warrior over a shitty desk job any day of the week. Funnily enough, Kaido's reasons for joining are a little different, even if he does hate his old job too. As a former delinquent, the chance to wave a weapon around and kill stuff without consequences is just too good, because that's not psychopathic at all. Plus, money and women. Jiro tries to tell him not to be a pig for that, but Kaido's quick to point out he's here for those same things. Seeing Jiro's confusion, he just flashes a shit-eating grin and points a finger up at Sueda, who's waving down at Jiro. As soon as Jiro waves back with a love-struck grin, Kaido gets a friendly ass-whooping for acting smug about it. Unfortunately for Kaido, the real pain is yet to come, because good old Scrawny and Brawny have heard about the new Vanguard recruit, and they're here to play. Fearing for his friend's life, Jiro tries to talk the instructors out of training Kaido so soon, and letting him get settled in first. Naturally, they figuratively pimp slap him out of the way and get started on driving Kaido into the ground right away. Can't make a strong dungeon tester by going easy on him after all. And so after that, once Kaido, Masaru, and Minami have all officially been hired, Jiro takes them out for a team meeting. Here he gets to know the two newcomers a little better, as well as the fact that Kaido's apparently got a monster girl fetish. Hey, at least he won't be hitting on the college girl. With that, training begins. While Kaido focuses on improving his physical skills, Masaru and Minami get tutoring from Sueda on how to tap into magic itself. Using mediums like a wand, they can channel the stuff more easily. Though Masaru isn't as compatible with the wand as Minami is. Speaking of who, this chick's a total slob. 3 push-ups and she looks like she's about to die. Meanwhile, Brawny's putting Kaido and Jiro through the ringer, taking absolute joy out of destroying them verbally and physically. After catching Kaido with a basic-ass taunt and tossing him aside, the real spar begins. Even if he's not going all out, he's impressed by how much Jito's improved, locking his blade with Brawny's pipe. Just like that, the party of four spends their days getting stronger and stronger together, until finally, they're ready. It's time for their first venture into the dungeon as a team. Despite their previous excitement, Jito's party members are understandably terrified by the appearance of the dungeon they've stepped into. After all, this is the Dragon King's dungeon. Between how terrifying it looks in the thin air from how high it is, they're struggling to even breathe. Luckily, Masuru's support magic channeled through his gauntlets takes care of that pretty easily. Next up, Minami uses a search spell to find any enemies in the area. These are the roles their newest members play. Masuru uses healing and general support magic, while Minami acts as the group's brains, eyes, and ears on top of being a disruptor. With this team comp and the formation Jito arranges them in, they're sure to be highly efficient at this whole thing. Not long into their trek through the dungeon, Minami senses monsters coming in from ahead. Not only that, they're coming from the air. Taking charge of the situation, Jito commands the others to work together and take out one of the demonic pterodactyls coming their way, while he handles the other two. Without missing a beat, Minami uses a paralysis spell to freeze one of the monsters, while Kaido and Masuru swiftly take it down. In the same time it took them to do that, Jito was sliced clean through both of his targets, reducing them to little more than strips of meat. Once everything's over, Jito is overjoyed to see how effective this new party is, and so the party continues, slaying whatever beasts come their way and trudging further and further into the dungeon. When they return and show their loot to Memoria for appraisal, even the vampire is shocked. They spent 3 whole days in the dungeon, made it all the way to the middle, and came back with a crystal dragon's fang/claw? After fully ignoring Kaido and Minami's attempts to hit on her, because of course they would, she gives them the payment for their drops, a whopping 800,000 yen. As they're leaving, Memoria just reminds Jito and the others to be more careful. When it comes to the matters of the pay, Jito tells them he'll put half of it into party funds and the other half will be split evenly among all of them. Masuru feels kinda undeserving of that, but Jito's quick to tell him that they're all even in this partnership. With that, everyone heads home for the day, ready for a long rest. As for Jito, he couldn't be happier with his job and life. Nothing can bring him down now. So naturally, a dude shows up to try and bring him down. Dude just oozes douchebaggery. Not really in the mood for this, Jito asks the man if he needs something from him. Meanwhile, unknown to any of the humans, the Demon Lord is observing everything with a sinister grin. As he speaks to his generals, some new information about Mao is revealed. While some would prefer to just kidnap and control the humans for their purposes, the Demon Lord, or the President as he insists on being called, claims that would make them no better than Eastwall. After all the heroes Eastwall dispatches to the dungeons are humans summoned from this world against their will. So instead of doing the same, Mao shall build a positive relationship with their human allies and build on that spirit of cooperation. As the generals comment on that to each other, Prez notices Evia right next to him and asks how Jito's been doing. As expected, Evia just notes that he's a useful man who's raising quite a buzz in the company. Right on cue, back in the corridors of Mao's dorm building, the man who confronted him starts insulting Jito. Apparently this guy, Toru Hizumi, has heard rumors about how Jito's an incompetent perv going after the female employees of Mao. Pretty much everything he just said contradicts itself, but the idiotic White Knight's too high on his own hero complex to realize that. Instead, he creates a fireball in his hand and prepares to launch it at Jito, yelling at him to resign with some dignity. After hearing him out, Jito's convinced of one thing. This guy's a total freaking moron. To tell someone to resign over baseless rumors when the company's already short on manpower is the stupidest thing he's heard since getting here. Deciding to just bitch slap this little dipshit and move on with his life, Jito casually stomps over to him, grabs the fireball with his bare hand to put it out, and walks away. As he does though, he has just 2 words for Toru. It's on. Of course, when Jito later meets with his party and tells him about what happened to his hand, they're not exactly super happy about it. Seriously? Making enemies with other employees? Come on, man. But regardless of that, there's one thing they can agree on. They've got to get that asswipe back for what he did and said. Shocked by their words, Jito asks if they're really planning to get involved in this when they don't need to. Altogether, the 3 party members just turn to Jito with a smile and ask what he's talking about. They're a party, aren't they? Just like that, the plan to get their revenge begins. Unnoticed by any of them, Sueda spots them from a distance and tries to catch Jito's attention, only to back away when she sees how close they've all gotten. Over in the HR department, Sueda mentions to her friends and coworkers that Jito's been acting differently. But instead of agreement, she's met with teasing from everyone over how she's just upset because he's not giving her as much attention as before. Toru's party has made some serious progress in Kyo's dungeon, having focused fully on it since they joined the company 3 months ago. As far as Toru's concerned, nobody knows more about this place or can clear it better than them. Except Jito's party, of course. They're flying through it like it's just another Tuesday, which to them it pretty much is. Thanks to that and Minami's exceptional strategic guidance, they're able to avoid pointless fights entirely and glide through the dungeon. When both parties return for the day, they bump into each other and Jito gives Toru a seemingly friendly wave. Of course, the insecure man-child just sees this as an insult and has to go get his ego boosted by the chicks that stick around him. Just like that, he's back to his smug self, talking about how those guys could never be as good as them. Fast forward about 10 days, and Jito's party are all gathered in an empty room with Sueda. After making a request to the Dark Elf for some surveillance equipment, Jito has invited her to watch something with them. That is, the performance of Toru Hizumi's party. Confident as ever, Toru and his party enter the dungeon, declaring it to be nothing more than the usual dark and gloomy place. Toru even claims that there's nothing more to it since they know every single enemy location and layout. Even as a swarm of goblins charge their way, they remain cocky, whipping out their weapons to fight back. And to their credit, they are pretty good. Between Toru's enchanted sword and his party members' elemental spells, the goblins go down hard and fast. That is, until they start acting abnormally. Out of nowhere, Toru's party members Miki and Karen have come under attack by a group of goblins that are lobbing stones at them. With these goblins tossing stones at them while the others fight them at close range, Miki and Karen have no time or room to focus on casting magic. When she yells at Toru to do something, the arrogant bastard just gets mad at her tone of voice as if this is the time to care about that. Just as he's wondering why the goblins are acting out of the usual, he spots one of them giving commands to the others. It's clear that something's not right here, but Toru's still aware that they can deal with it. Without giving it a second thought, he orders his party members to switch to close combat and carve a path through the goblins. Of course, he conveniently ignores the fact that they aren't close-range fighters. Meanwhile, Jito and his party are watching the whole show from their room with massive grins on their faces. Totally lost as to what's going on, Sueda turns to Jito, who explains about the little fight he's gotten into with Toru. Seeing how concerned Sueda instantly gets, Jito notes that this is exactly why he didn't tell her about the situation sooner. He didn't want to worry her after all, something his teammates are thoroughly enjoying. But that aside, Jito explains that since the whole thing's kinda on him, he's decided to take Toru on and settle the score. And since this is a work-related grudge, it's gotta be paid back with work. Down in the dungeon, Toru's party members are already exhausted. Somehow, the goblins just keep getting stronger and their teamwork better. As they wonder what's going on, Toru suddenly has a realization. This feeling, this contrived situation, it couldn't be, could it? But for now, he shelves that in favor of raging at how much effort it's taken them just to reach the 3rd floor. And of course, with the kind of personality he has, this sparks an argument with his party members, where he claims it's all their fault for not keeping up with them. Before the argument can escalate anymore though, yet another swarm of goblins appears, and this time they're all armed. Toru and his team are instantly thrown on the defensive as they face enemies that normally only spawn beyond the 5th floor. Meanwhile, up in the observation room where Jito and Ko are, he explains the current situation in the dungeon. See, since there's a limit to the amount of magic on each floor, he pitched the idea for the number of monsters to be decreased in favor of making each of them stronger. Then by adding stone throwing and commanding types, a party with too many magic-dependent long-range rearguards is basically crippled. Sure enough, not only are Toru's party members losing concentration and stamina, they're forced to depend on him to defend them. To the surprise of Jito's friends, Toru's party actually make it to the 5th floor, but Jito's ready for that. Everything until now was just meant to exhaust them. This right here is where the real hell begins. Because the blood monster that's meant to guard the deepest part of the 5th floor will now spawn right at its entrance. Sure enough, as soon as they step into its domain, the Minotaur tries to crush Toru's exhausted party, tossing them away. As they scatter, Toru can practically feel the killing intent in the air, and somehow through sheer paranoia and obsession, he comes to the correct conclusion. This is all the doing of Jito Tanaka. As Jito watches the whole thing with a smirk, Toru rages through his injuries, screaming that he'll beat Jito and the Minotaur both. So absorbed is he in his anger and desire that Toru doesn't even notice what's happening right behind him. Before Toru and Miki can even register what's going on, Karen's been stabbed all the way through by a group of goblins that stuck up on them from behind. As the mage collapses to the ground, the goblins gang up and beat the stuffing out of her, there and then. Toru simply watches in shock, realizing that the goblins from the previous floors have chased them all the way here. As he comes to terms with this, Karen's body finally gives out. The abuse of the goblins too much for her to survive. Just like that, her form disintegrates and her consciousness returns to her real body outside the dungeon. That leaves Toru and Miki alone to deal with not only the Minotaur, but also the goblins that are now on their ass. And sure enough, they don't even survive another moment, instantly being clobbered into oblivion by the Bulls Club. With that, Team Jiro's vengeance is complete. Up in the observation room, the party explains to an impressed Sueda that they made these improvements to the dungeon, along with a bunch of traps and contraptions, all the way to the 30th floor. And then there's the different goblin types they've added like phalanx and ninjas with poison darts. They really went all out. In fact, their actions were so impressive that the generals have taken notice. In an informal meeting between Evia, Scrawny, and Brawny, they talk about how the tester crush has finally begun. The true nature of Mao, where they take advantage of the competitiveness and rivalry between the testers to have them strengthen the dungeon. With this, as they strive to create dungeons that destroy each other, they'll end up with one too powerful for even the hero to conquer. And Jito is the one who triggered the beginning of this. As usual, that man is certainly an interesting one. Right now though, he's busy enjoying another unofficial date with Sueda. While they're talking, Sueda explains how the press is introducing a ranking system for the testers that awards special bonuses throughout the year. Apparently, it's thanks to Jito's action that the more skeptical among the 7 generals are now more open to the whole corporate expansion idea. And although she makes sure to scold him for not telling her beforehand, she also makes sure to tell him how happy she is to have him, all while holding his hands. Later that same day, Jito's party has to deal with an overly enthusiastic and energetic team leader who's determined to conquer the dungeon they made. Almost as if he's got a sixth sense for that stuff, Kaido instantly realizes what kind of good thing happened to Jito and chokes on his own saltiness. Luckily, he soon finds another target for teasing and quickly starts jabbing at Masaru and his feelings for Minami. The very Minami who's currently fantasizing about Kaido and Masaru banging. Chick's a freak. However, as the group are messing around and enjoying themselves, a shrill alarm suddenly blares out across the training hall. As they all wonder what the hell is going on, one of the hall's walls is suddenly blown open, and from behind it, a dark and ominous figure reveals itself. In order to understand what exactly Jito and his friends are now facing, we have to rewind a little and see what led up to this. Not long ago, Mao's president was approached by a masked figure who wished to create a new golem-type blood monster, a highly designed unit that will require full access to the development department. Luckily for the smaller being, Evia speaks in favor of the idea, mentioning that the development department's currently unused anyways, and so Mask is given the go-ahead to create this new monster. In fact, the president along with Evia and about half of the 7 generals are going on a trip soon, so Mask can do whatever she wants. Upon being told of the president's expectations, Mask assures him that this is a monster that was designed after much research into Earth's culture and mechanical capabilities. Not only will this beast perform highly, but also be equipped with fantastical features to catch targets off guard. However, whenever one attempts to create something beyond common sense, precautions must be taken. In this case, they were not, and the monster somehow gained sentience. And so, after forcefully absorbing all the magic from the lab it was made in, several models of this new monster have now broken free to wreak havoc across Mao. One of these mechanical monstrosities stands before Jito and his friends, its movements only made more threatening by the alarm that's still blaring at full volume. As terrifying as the creature's power may be though, Kaido's quick to notice something pretty comical. The monster, the pose it's hitting, the design, it's all a lower quality version of Hakai Teto from the Monster Rangers anime. That moment of comic relief doesn't last long though, because the alarm suddenly switches to a warning, announcing that a new type of blood monster's on the loose. Even worse, only members of the Demon Lord's army are cleared to fight and capture it, while testers are warned not to engage it under any circumstances. As they watch the thing from afar, Jito warns the others about how the thing's armed and their anti-death safety feature is inactive since they're not in the dungeon. However, this warning ends up being useless as before any of them can even think to defend or flee, Kaido's gone. In the blink of an eye, the golem has reached their position and attacked the dual wielder with enough force to rocket him into the wall. Instantly switching to combat mode, Jito orders Masaru and Minami to get to Kaido and treat him before it's too late. While they do that, Jito prepares to hold the golem off as long as he can. But even he knows he can't match the speed and power it just displayed. Sure enough, as Jito hits the thing with one of his fastest sword slashes, it blocks effortlessly and counters with a barrage of hits. It takes everything Jito has and more just to defend himself and survive the sudden onslaught, convincing him that he could die at any point if he slips up. Meanwhile, Sueda reaches the lab the golems broke out of and questions Royce about what happened. Instantly, he explains that the new blood type got free by sucking out the magic power running through the lab's cables. As a monster designed by Mask herself, or Kyo as he calls her, with the full efforts of the development department on top of that, this thing is far too powerful for anyone but a general to even dent. Because that monster was created for one purpose, to become the floor boss of the dungeon. Back in the training hall, Jito's doing everything in his power to protect his friends, but it's not looking great. Just when he seems to be on his last legs, Kaido suddenly bursts onto the scene to help, having been healed by the others. Unfortunately, because of how hurt he was, healing him took everything Masaru had. With no possibility of more healing, they put their all into offense, launching at the golem after Minami uses a power boost spell on them. Unfortunately, the golem is still too far behind them, defeating Kaido with the single hit yet again. Even Jito only barely survives when he's forced to take a sword flash from the monster head on, pushing his body to its limits. And yet, worse still, with the vanguard fighters down, the golem's attention has shifted to the mages of the party. With Masaru exhausted and Minami being a non-combatant, they're defenseless as the golem suddenly closes in on them. As the beast's sword comes down on her, Minami can only watch helplessly as her death approaches. But then, at the last moment, Masaru suddenly jumps in front of her, ready to die in her place. As human blood splatters across the training hall's floor, Sueda races across the building to find Jito. All across Mao, the generals who are still here have been taking down as many golems as they can, but she still can't shake this bad feeling. If Jito or the others are attacked outside the dungeon, where the anti-death precaution is inactive, they're going to lose their lives for real. As she finally reaches the training hall and bursts through the destroyed entrance, Sueda's eyes land on her worst fear brought to life. Standing in front of Masaru and Minami to defend them, Jito has been slashed clean through by the golem. Blood bursts out of his body like a fountain as his friend's eyes widen in horror. And as Jito collapses, his life flowing out of him by the second, a single voice screams out in despair. Masaru and Minami are frozen with absolute despair as they watch their leader, the man they look up to, dying in front of their eyes to save them. As his body falls flat on the floor, Suera rushes towards his body, her mind flashing through everything he means to her. When she first met him, she'd figured he'd just be another disappointing human who turned down the job. Not because she thought ill of him, but because that's just how things had been going for her for the longest time. No matter how many humans she interviewed, which wasn't a lot to begin with, they'd all just be half-hearted and indecisive. Every time she met a human, she'd just have to wipe their memory of Mao and send them back on their way, while her coworkers kept getting more and more recruits. It was honestly just terrible luck, which was why Evia never held it against her. Despite that, she did advise Suera to consider switching jobs. That was when he showed up, the man who she interviewed expecting to be the same as everyone else. But then, when she showed him the dungeon and saw the face he made, how could she not start having expectations again? To start hoping again? It wasn't even about his high magic aptitude, but his drive. He didn't quit. He didn't give in to fear nor to pain. Even when he was driven into the ground in training, he stayed. And as she watches him, she grew to care and to worry. Before she knew it, she couldn't take her eyes off him anymore. Every time he'd get hurt, she'd be there to heal him and tell him to be more careful. And every time, he'd flash her a smile that warmed her heart more than anything else. Jiro Tanaka, the man with hair and eyes as dark as the night itself, captured her heart completely. And now she's just supposed to let this hunk of metal take that away from her? No. As her eyes drill rage-filled holes into the golem, light gathers around her hands. She will not allow this. As Suera's magic flares to life in the form of chains all around the golem, it attempts to react and save itself. Unfortunately for the monster, its programming can't respond fast enough to avoid the chains of light that are now coiling around it. As the beast is stopped in its tracks, Suera takes the moment of relief to cast a powerful healing spell on Jiro. Right before their very eyes, his flesh slowly knits itself back together, his blood replenishing, and his life returning. Now that he's taken care of, Suera can focus her attention fully on releasing her anger. For almost robbing her of the one man to give her hope, she will destroy this monster. After a quick chant, she slams her palm on the ground and calls forth an eldritch horror of shadow and flame. So powerful is the summon that even Scrawny and Brawny feel it from across the building. With the manifestation of this monstrosity, the mighty Balrog, the golem stands no chance. All Suera tells it is to destroy the monster, and 1,000 fists of flaming fury suddenly rain down upon the golem. With each impact, a wave of heat and darkness washes over the entire hall, forcing Masaru to shield the others. Little by little, the golem is reduced to nothingness, while the power of Balrog is felt by all in the area. From where they are after taking down their own golems, Scrawny and Brawny comment on how powerful the summon of hers is. As far as Scrawny's concerned, however, that just shows how much she cares for Jiro. Even in that moment, she's sitting on the floor of the hall, cradling Jiro's head as she apologizes for not getting there sooner. Days later, Jiro's eyes slowly open inside the infirmary of Mao HQ. Worn out and low on energy, he asks where he is while Masaru and Minami freak out. And I mean really freak out in Minami's case. Get a hold of yourself, woman. Meanwhile, Kaido and Masaru just smile at their waking leader while the former tells him he's been asleep for 2 whole days. As for Jiro, while he's obviously overjoyed that everyone's fine, the only thing on his mind is what happened and where that golem is. Shocked that he's that out of it, Kaido anxiously explains how Jiro was cleaved nearly all the way through and was actually dying. If Suera hadn't showed up, or if things had gone even a little differently, they'd all be dead right now. To Jiro, the one part that rings out most is that he couldn't stop it. He couldn't protect his people. Noticing the awkward air, Masaru drags Minami along with him to go tell the doctor that he's awake. Now that they're all alone, Kaido tells Jiro that he's been meaning to ask something. It might be dressed up and all, but in all honesty, this place is just another kind of black company, isn't it? A moment of awkward silence passes between them, after which Jiro just turns around and says he needs more sleep. Meanwhile, unknown to any of the humans, the management of Mao is in chaos over what's just happened. While Evia demands full reports on everything that's happened and prepares for the president's return, she asks her underlings how Jiro Tanaka is doing. Upon hearing that he'll live, she feels at least one burden lift off her shoulders. Not only is he both a tester and a recruiter, but if he died, it'd be a breach of Mao's no-death clause, which would cause most of their testers to resign on the spot. And it doesn't help that the president has a soft spot for that guy as well, on top of everything else. But what she's most worried about isn't any of that, but someone else entirely. Just how will she react to this whole disaster? Before long, news of the golem incident has spread throughout Mao like wildfire, along with the news the operations are being suspended for a while. With things as they are, many of the employees are worried about their positions. Meanwhile, the situation down in the underground malls practically is seen out of a comedy show. Memoria and Giganto are currently in the former store discussing the effects of the suspension, or at least Giganto is, and Memoria is wondering what the hell he's doing in her shop. For that matter, why the hell is everyone from Jiro's party except the man himself here too? The only response she gets is from Kaido, who tells her everyone's on edge in the company and this is the only place that's relatively peaceful. So basically her place is a hideout, and that obviously pisses her right off. Her ranting is cut short, however, when Giganto speaks, asking the humans what they're going to do from here. When Kaido asks what he means, the giant clarifies that they know now just how dangerous their job actually is, so will they really continue it? Hearing it said out loud, each of them goes silent for a moment. Are they going to continue? Meanwhile, over in the HR department, pretty much everyone's taken note of how dejected Sueda's been acting ever since the incident. And while most of them are alright with leaving her be, one person isn't. And who else might that be but Evia herself? Between Sueda already being her unspoken favorite and the company being in disarray, the girl's bad mood is just pissing her off. She tries to tell the others to do something about it, but they just bounce it right back at Evia, which of course pisses her off even more. But she can't deny it's kind of her responsibility. So without wasting another second, she marches up to Sueda, binds her with magic, and tells her to go do a job only she can while opening up a portal. As anyone would be in this situation, Sueda's completely and utterly confused. Meanwhile, up in his Mao-provided apartment, Cheeto's busy not being busy. This is the first time since joining Mao that he's had so much free time thanks to the suspension. Despite this, he hasn't been able to meet with Sueda and thank her. If anything, it seems like she's avoiding him, and he's not exactly proud of it, but he's relapsed into his smoking habit too. Every time he closes his eyes, he's brought right back to that moment when he was dying. He can only think about how lame he was for getting overconfident in his abilities after a few successes when there's monsters like that out there. At this point, should he just quit? But after a moment, Jito reminds himself that he already knows the answer to that. He's not just going to... Huh? Right in the middle of his brooding, a portal suddenly appears in the middle of his room and Evia steps out. Naturally terrified and nervous, Jito's just wondering what the hell's going on. Rather than answering, Evia tells him she's in a hurry and orders him to stand up and hold his arms out steadily. Next thing he knows, a portal opens over his arms and spits out a startled Sueda, who lands right in said arms. As Evia leaves through her portal, her job done, Jito and Sueda can only stare after her with massive blushes on their faces. Once she's gone, Jito tries to break the ice by asking how Sueda's doing, but the dark elf's still melting down. After all, she's still in his arms. Instantly, Jito puts her down, embarrassed beyond belief. Now that they're alone, Jito and Sueda take a seat on his couch, where the dark elf's sadness only becomes clearer. After all, she can smell the smoke from Jito's cigarettes, and she knows how rattled he must be to be relapsing. As they sit there in silence, Sueda tells him that she's worried about him. But that's not all. Before she can overthink things and chicken out, Sueda goes and bares her heart to Jito, telling him how much the thought of losing him terrifies her, how she felt like she'd never be able to stand again when she thought he was gone. And so for his sake, she wants him to quit this job. She knows it's a selfish request. Hell, it goes against even the company's interests, but he matters more to her than any of that. She'll take whatever punishment she gets if it means he can live. Before she can spiral any further, Sueda's words are halted by Jito gently grabbing onto her shoulders and pulling her close. With their faces closer than ever, Jito tells her he doesn't like that idea. This job, he likes it. That's why he won't quit. Even as Sueda reminds him of how dangerous that incident was, he tells her he still wants to be here. And when Sueda asks why, he pulls her close, smiles, and tells her it's simple. He can't really put it into words, but being here just feels like the right choice for him. After all, he got to meet her because of it. While those two share that tender moment, a far less positive meeting is currently underway in the president's throne room. After teasing Evia a bit for playing matchmaker, he addresses Kyo Amelie, the mask-wearing woman who bears the responsibility for the golems. While the president accepts it's partly his fault for giving her the go-ahead, he has to pass judgment on her regardless. Of course, he won't kill her since no one died, but still. As the president creates a massive ball of energy as a threat and tells her to prove her sincerity, Kyo simply says something so outlandish it almost breaks Evia and him. She's ready for her next plan, which will use data from this experiment's failure to improve on it. In order to atone for the failure, she can offer the success of this next plan. Eccentric as he is, the president's thoroughly entertained by Kyo's words and tells her she has his approval, but she must understand there will be no next time should this fail as well, because he knows what she's thinking. Those four from Jito's party, they survived the golem, and when testers with magic crests reach that line between life and death, their crest and its powers grow exponentially, a fact that can be seen clearly as a recovered Jito and his party easily beat new versions of the golems in the dungeon. What if they had been the hero's party instead of some Mao testers? That's why next time, nothing will defeat Kyo's creation, or at the very least, nothing will survive. As for those survivors themselves, they're already setting out for their first job after the end of the suspension. Despite how horrific the golem incident was for each of them, they're determined to stick around and get stronger than ever. Or to get money and the Huz in Kaido's case, but it still kinda counts. As they prepare to head out into the dungeon, they're seen off by Sueda, who they're all shocked to see Jito addressing by her first name. Faster than Jito can blink, his party's all over them, demanding details on when they got into a relationship and congratulating them, prompting Sueda to blush and thank Masuda and Minami. As for Kaido, well, he's experiencing an entire lifetime's worth of jealousy condensed into a single moment, sparking a deep and highly temporary hatred for his party leader. While Masaru helps him get over that, Sueda speaks to Jiro, gently yet terrifyingly reminding him that both being reckless and cigarettes are forbidden from now on. After that little exchange, it's time for them to head out. No slacking off, no losing focus, no getting injured, and no being reckless. From now on, the humans who found a world of their fantasies and left behind their boring everyday lives will constantly move forward. They will make a dungeon that not even the heroes can conquer.